your body feels jacked up, it's stuck in fight, flight, freeze type sympathetic reactions, it's likely that you're experiencing dysregulation or symptoms of it. Today, we're going to talk about 5 ways to heal and regulate your nervous system. And this is going to be just from the get-go. A lot of people get stuck with this because when you set that intention, I want to heal my body, I want to regulate my nervous system, it's likely that you're experiencing dysregulation or symptoms of it. Your body feels jacked up, it's stuck in fight, flight, freeze type sympathetic reactions. And so, what we're not going to do is try and force the body to regulate with some biohack. This is about restoring your ability, your flexibility, the resilience at a level of your nervous system to be able to come back to a parasympathetic state. So, with that in mind, let's dive into it with Marcus. So, the first of 5 points that we wanted to go into when you're looking to regulate your nervous system and heal your body is to address emotional regulation. Would you like to start off, Marcus?
Yeah, what I often observe and what I see in myself when I reflect back many years, what many people think when they talk about emotional regulation is when they had a intense day, they have to go out and do sports and do this and do some activities which feel like they are regulating. But the pitfall of this can be that they are not regulating, they are just producing emotions to lay upon what's really happening so they can
Mm,
feel better.
mm,
So it's not a regulation, it's more a overwriting of not feeling what's really happening. And we are talking about feeling what's really happening
mm,
and just be okay with that. Maybe
mm.
this is a good way of thinking and to have a distinctive perspective what emotional regulation can be instead of keep running and feeling better after an activity.
Yes, yeah. Like one of the first stages that I tend to notice when it comes to regulating yourself and the emotions that can come up is to move first into a state of acceptance with what is happening. And the antithesis of that you can observe is if there is avoidance. And so, like one of the first things, like even when it comes to healing, healing can become I'm going to heal my emotions. I'm going to regulate my emotions. I'm going to do something straight away. We're looking at it and implying that I need to fix something within me, that I am inherently broken. So there is an absence of acceptance there. There is avoidance through that, in that the healing will get me to a place where I'm regulated, but it's actually the pathways is through is in meeting those emotions and starting to allow them first to be experienced rather than avoided. Experienced not cognitively, because we won't always understand, but embodied perspective, because it happens in the body. We're experiencing a reaction in the body, which then
Yeah,
dysregulates us because we can't
yeah.
handle that reaction.
Emotion is biochemistry. This is nothing intellectual.
Yeah, yeah, and often a lot of the time, which we'll go into as we go into the video, is looking at inner child work. And like you went through experiences, and before you were cognitively developed, formative years of psychological development tend to happen up to around age 7 to 8. And so, in that state, we're in a purely emotion driven state. We don't have cognitive context for meanings of really anything. So, we then experience all these emotions, and then something in our adult life then can trigger that experience, but we don't have that cognitive understanding of what it is. And so, it can keep perpetuating and be a real experience in the body, but we don't always know why. And then we try and understand it, but often we can't because we haven't had there was no cognitive context during that
Yes.
time. And
Yeah.
so this is why it can be a bit difficult, to be able to kind of work it out. And sometimes you have these like hits of, I've worked it out. which we've talked about in other videos. Like, I feel so much better because I worked it out that, I was abandoned as a child. But then that's just like a cognitive understanding. There's still that layer in the emotional body, which is in the physical body, that needs to be addressed.
Yeah. I often look at those things like this is an energetic or emotional tendency, which is just leading to the same patterns over and over again. And when we can deepen our awareness for these deeper layers of tendency in our system, yeah, then we are more in a responsive state and can really feel before we go into any action, okay, what or which tendency is running the show at the moment,
Mm,
just becoming aware of, and then we can be more yeah, responsive and not reacting to
mm.
anything.
Well, as we move on to the next point, I'll say probably one practical step that can start a process of emotional regulation that works with being in a state of acceptance of what you're feeling is just like checking in with yourself. How am I feeling now? And you can sort of have this little sentence in your mind of like, I am here completely with you now. And this may intensify the experience because what we focus on grows. But through practicing this consistently, it starts to develop this ability to allow yourself to experience what's happening for you and just starting that process. I'm here with you completely now, and sitting with those uncomfortable feelings, no matter what. It takes a lot. Not everyone is prepared to do it, but on the other
Yeah.
side, there is a a massive space of liberation once you move through these things that may have been operating for a long time.
Yeah, that's true.
So, so a practice that can be really healing for the body, both at a physical and, like at the level of your nervous system, that I find really useful and we've found useful in a range of different ways, is standing meditation. This can really support the regulation of the emotions. One of the things that I find really effective about it and that I personally love about it is it's an embodied form of meditation in that it is physical and touches on all those emotional, mental layers at the same time. Whereas, and this is not to say that one form of meditation is better than the other, but there is something unique about it in, like, let's say we're doing a laying meditation or a seated meditation, which I'm still a big advocate for. It We can enter a state of dissociation with that because we're not as physically present. If you're not physically present with standing meditation, well, you fall over. But
Yeah.
in going in other things, like, we can disconnect our mind from our bodies, and which can become, I did this for a long time. It became a way for me to actually opt out and avoid my experience.
Yes.
When I thought, "Oh, I'm meditating, I'm gonna get enlightened," when I actually was avoiding all of those deep, dark shadow parts of myself that were coming up in everyday life. And
Yeah.
yeah, so standing meditation, of course, we can do that in anything, but it's really useful. And yeah, I'd love to hear your experiences and insights on that, Marcus.
Yes. Standing is just a really pragmatic thing. And maybe this is the thing which defines us as humans. And we just look at those basic perspectives. Yeah, then everything is sad. And it's really a wonderful point of view, like, okay, now you're standing here and you're not going anywhere. it's
Mhm.
it's really for me is some deeper anchor than just sitting or hanging around. It's really, okay, here I'm standing and I'm present to see what's happening. So it's very insightful and I'm still loving it. I'm using a lot also with my students. And yeah, it can happen that someone is also losing connection in standing meditation, which can lead to fall over. I observed that too in my classes, but this happens. This happened two or one or two times in 7 or 8 years, so it's very rare because the body is just bringing you back.
Mm.
So I'm really loving it, and also in a way of meditation is just opening up And in standing, this is very, very physical present if you're opening or if you're closing the body because
Mm,
of intense physical sensations.
mm. A simple way to look at the process of standing meditation, I find, is like when you even look at the word, you're standing, so you're physically active. You're practicing a form of meditation, which really meditation in a simple way could be seen as like the intersection between awareness and attention. So in standing meditation, you're becoming aware of what's happening within you. You can't run away, well, you can, but the intention of being still gives you an opportunity to really self-reflect and contemplate.
Yeah. And you know the beautiful thing with different postures, if you're running, you will experience so intense sensations in the body that you will recognize that the body's telling you you're running.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And you go through layers of experience of like in the beginning, like in any meditative practice, the awareness heightens, and
Yeah.
sensations heighten, like the presence of thoughts heightens, emotional content heightens, it all heightens. And we can then see how the way we direct our attention influences our experience. And
Yeah.
so in the beginning, like your awareness will go to all the things that are uncomfortable, all the things that you don't like. You see all of your thought patterns and forms and all those sorts of things. And then you get an opportunity to then go, oh, okay, look at how I'm directing my attention and look in real time how that is affecting my experience. If I'm like zooming in on pain and then catastrophizing about that pain of like, this is the worst thing, this is never going to go away, I'm going to be stuck like this forever. Like I know how that feels because I've been there. But you look at it, you know, it's like going into a cold body of water. If you go past that initial shock and allow the experience to unfold, eventually you actually acclimatize and you expand your ability to have a wide range of experiences and not be hyper focused on any one. So this is where, it is very regulating because you can then be triggered by things and start to realize, oh, okay, I made it through this. I'm okay. I actually let myself experience. I didn't run from it. That's powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Creating space.
Mm. So, which brings us into the third practice that can be really powerful to heal the body, to regulate the nervous system, which is somatic movement. And to put that simply, we're moving with awareness on the body. It seems like a weird thing, but like often exercise can be used as a way to create certain feelings to feel better, endorphins and all that sort of stuff, which can, and I'll put my hand up first to say that I was in this for a long time as a way of avoidance of the experience that we're having because we want
Yeah.
to, like you said before, Marcus, like override it with something else. But with somatic movement, we meet where that is. We put the internal experience at the forefront, and we dial that up, which becomes a very therapeutic process.
Yeah. In a way, somatic movement, I think, simply put, is just standing meditation in movement. So really slowing down and watching, observing what's happening. And the beautiful thing with standing meditation or also with somatic movements, when you are a bit aware of gravity and biomechanic things through the body, those things are very stabilizing for the whole system. Where you see, okay, relaxation, regulation can build the base for stability where you can start to really set up the body in a more natural way instead of trying to force it, instead of trying to override it, coming back to the natural base, standing, somatic movement, and then build up from there. Doesn't matter if it's strength, flexibility, resilience, capacity. It's just a good way to start.
Yeah, it becomes a very powerful base, I find, in a lot of the time we can have fear of the body because we don't know the body. And and because we're always trying to do things to change the body. So when somatic movement doesn't necessarily mean, because like this is it's commonplace, somatic movement is becoming more known, and with it is often a lot of very like gentle looking movements, and it can be that, but it can also be applied to sporting pursuits. It can be applied to, like very high levels of physical performance because it brings awareness into the process of what's happening. It brings essentially like feeling into the experience. It's maybe the difference between like doing an aerobics class to like doing some form of like contemporary dance, that the dance can't be communicated without that inner experience of feeling rippling out. And so we are connecting with that layer, and the intensity can be scaled depending on someone's capacity. So I find that this is useful, particularly if people have like a background in more sort of yang-based activity, like higher performing sports and all that, and then they come back down after they've had injuries and all sorts of different things and go, oh, this is too easy for me. I can't find any benefit in this. But you
Yeah.
can take it along a continuum of really connecting with the human experience of the body in a range of different ways.
Yeah. What I started to do with pro athletes, I just often start off using something like a barbell squat. They know putting weights away and just allow them to move in a somatic way.
Mm.
And they can feel straight away what's happening.
It is very powerful, and it really allows us to step outside of the attaching to the idea of right and wrong ways to move as well. Because often, like with movements like that, it's like this is how you squat, like knees out, chest up, butt
Yeah.
out, that's how you squat. But everyone's got different nuance in their biomechanics, and to be able to feel the efficiency of your own mechanics,
Yeah.
that's a really powerful thing. So it doesn't have to be all emotional and soft. It can be what you make it, but it's bringing awareness to movement, is really is the
Yeah.
core. So on the flip side of that, if we look at regulating nervous system, healing the body, we will inevitably bump into an area of exploration which can be referred to as inner child work. And what this can refer to is essentially addressing that at some point we were all children. And within us, that child has had experience, and often then we become an adult, and it's like those things, there might be incomplete experiences, things that were not heard, that where we weren't seen as ourselves, where we were judged and shamed and all sorts of things. And sometimes, when we go into the emotional layer of that, it it can leave us at a point where we don't always have the resources to manage it. But we do have one ally in that you survived through it and you became an adult. And the question within a child work that I like to ask is, if you were there for that child that went through that experience, how might you have been with them? What did they need? And delivering that experience in the present to that past experienced self can then start to develop a sense of like reassociate the identity that we may have delegated to our parents and our family and all of that sort of thing, and to start to see, oh, okay, it's like a re-parentification process in a way.
Yeah, when we look at things like inner child work from a really pragmatic point of view, it's often that most of the people I work with, they don't want to be like their parents. And as it is in life, what you don't want to have, you're already doing. And then it's just to realize, okay, when I was a child, my parents were my authorities. I accepted them as authorities, and maybe I'm still doing it. And I was growing up in this atmosphere of my parents. So automatically I started to behave like them because I learned from them in every second, in every moment. And in this atmosphere, I started to feel different because I feel like I'm on a level, I'm an individual human being. And this was creating some friction where I made some unconscious beliefs. And when we just look at things like inner child work from this perspective, it's really easy to look at it and to go through. Because you see, it was just naturally happening, and now I can make different choices and start integrating.
Yeah. And often, like, because we can't change the past, but we
Yeah.
can change the meaning of it
Yes.
in our own experience. And so this is like the other side of like going into allowing yourself to experience unresolved things, incomplete emotions and experiences and things that maybe you wish would have happened or could have happened, and then actually creating those experiences within yourself. It's it can seem like it's ignorance, but when it works hand in hand with like the allowance of the experience physically, in an embodied way, like we're
Yeah.
talking, and why we're kind of talking about this, like we're not intending to try and be um,
Yeah.
experts on the psychology here, but we're connecting to this in you have a body, it's gone through experiences. How do we consolidate those experiences? And we can work with that at a range of different levels, and we can connect with that in a child and reassociate, reconsolidate those experiences so they don't keep repeating and having to then be pressed out into the world to try and solve them, to solve them through another. This is often it can cause a lot of challenge in relationships of like, I had this experience as a child, it's developed a fear within me. I don't want that to happen again. And then you meet someone, they trigger that body memory. Now that's the wonderful work that we can do of going, okay, where did this come from? And giving that child that thing that it may have needed at that time.
Yeah. Integrating.
Yeah,
Yeah.
integrating. It's I think probably a wonderful replacement word for the term healing,
Yeah.
is like to make whole.
Yeah.
So the last point uh, around this, and there's more that you can explore with this, but this is intended to be as a wonderful entry point into how we can work with the body at a deep level to come back to a state of regulation, particularly if we are chronically stuck in that fight, flight, freeze state because of all of the things we've been talking about, is vagus nerve stimulation. So this is what we're kind of doing here. This is a physiology first approach to starting to reestablish almost like a defrosting of the body in a way. Like the vagus nerve, is the longest cranial nerve in the body. It has branches from the brain stem all the way down and goes through the heart and through the all the major organs, really down through the digestive organs. So it's a pretty big thing in the body. And so think of it is when there's problems, is imagine it to kind of be like squeezing like this. If you were to have your fist squeezed for a long time, eventually like things get a bit stuck. So
Yeah.
by stimulating the vagus nerve directly, then we can start to unfreeze and soften those held patterns, and then that can open up a door to other practices that we've been speaking about. But it's really useful if you are stuck in that chronic kind of freeze state or chronic states of sympathetic response from the nervous system. This can be one way of starting to reconnect and like loosen up the physiological grip.
Yeah. And there are different approaches, but in this space, you have done more research. What I experienced is using just some sound frequencies to stimulate the vagus nerve, or slightly tapping, which can be supportive when we are looking at from a practical point of view.
Mm.
Yeah, but you have done some deeper research, so
Yeah.
maybe you share some insights
Yeah,
about that.
yeah, of course. Yeah, it's like at the end of the day, I find it's useful to keep things simple. If we think about what we're looking to do here is first to create motion, where there is stagnation, So if we look at, let's say this nerve or the nervous system in general is stuck, first we can create vibration, you know, that can be through just humming. A very simple thing to start to create vibration inside and then observing the body. We create a contrast. This is what's happening in the experience. So, if your tendency has been to be like a deer in the headlights, when stress comes in internally, starting to interrupt that pattern can start to then change things that are happening through your nervous system. So, physical stimulation, particularly working with different acupressure points around the brain stem, around through the neck where the vagus nerve intersects, around through the chest and the heart, around through the digestive organs, will all cause vibrations that move through the vagus nerve. And then things as simple as breathing, you know, if we really come back to breathing without trying to force the breathing, but inviting the breath to start to open up the body. Initially, you may feel areas of holding, and then by simply just being with them and going through a process of breathing, a natural release process can start to happen. So there's lots of ways that you can stimulate it. That can be, of course, there's more involved means like electrical stimulation, where electrodes are placed on the area directly. But, for a lot of people, I find it's really effective just to be able to do this by yourself in your own way. See how powerful your body is by giving it these very simple points of stimulus and then applying it consistently over time. So then you can start to go from, oh, I didn't know, like, a fish in water doesn't really, not that I know this definitively, but it doesn't really think about the water. It's like we don't really think so much about air until we don't have enough. Like it
Yeah.
is just the life force that is around us. And so what we're looking to do is actually create a contrast. If you have been in a freeze state for an extended period and it's become chronic, that may be normal for you. So one of the things that we're doing with vagus nerve, like direct stimulation work, is to create a contrast. Initially, it may be uncomfortable because it is change, and change can be a scary process. But through creating the contrast, the space between it, you then start to see, oh, okay, I have options. And that's one of the things that's regulating for the nervous system is we can start to then experience what it is to be like in a more parasympathetic state, a more rest and digest state, feeling the body start to rest and regulate and heal. And that can then start you on the journey.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing. And what I just realized, I'm I know all those practices, but I was not connecting those things directly to the vagus nerve.
Mm.
Yeah, it was very insightful to look at it from this perspective. So thanks for sharing.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for sharing too, Marcus. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
so to sum up what we've been talking about, so the 5 points. So, emotional regulation, standing meditation, somatic movement, inner child work, and vagus nerve stimulation, all really useful ways. Just one of them could be the thing that is, opens up a door of integration for you on a journey of healing that you may be on. And the goal is to not control yourself or your nervous system into a calm state. That's it's one of the mistakes that so many people make.
Yeah.
It's really, like we were saying before, it's about expanding your flexibility and your capacity to be able to shift into a parasympathetic state. So your body and nervous system can regulate just naturally because that is our natural state.
Yes.
Yeah.
And calming down, what many think about regulation is just interrupting this regulation process because you're holding on to a belief that I need to be calm.
Yeah, in order to regulate. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I think final parting words is, beyond all of this, know how powerful you are, know how powerful your mind is, know how powerful your body is, and know that your natural state is regulation. And what we're doing is starting to become more aware of those deep unconscious parts of ourselves that we may not be aware of that are chronically dysregulating us, that are trying to inherently do the best thing for us, which is to protect. And so now you get to go through that process and realize that, okay, regulation is my natural state. We get to look at what is it within me that is perpetuating dysregulation.
Yeah. Well put.
So thanks for tuning in. And if you'd like to learn more about how we do this all in a practical context, that's why we created the Physical Freedom Challenge. And you'll go through 14 days going through somatic movement practices, learning the basics of standing meditation, doing emotional regulation work. It's a really powerful starting point. If you do have things going on with your body and you'd like to look at it more holistically, rather than just trying to address things just purely from a physical context, which often doesn't work for a lot of people because you're a human being first rather than a human doing. So that would be my recommended next step if what we've shared is resonant for you.